All right, let's jump right into the midnight cortisol spike. Picture this. You're eating what you think is a super healthy dinner, right? Maybe a sensible portion of pasta, a big pile of veggies, but that stubborn belly fat, it literally just will not budge. Well, in this explainer, we're going to uncover exactly why that's happening. And spoiler alert, it actually has absolutely nothing to do with counting your calories. If you're sitting there feeling like you're doing everything right but seeing zero results, honestly, take a deep breath. We really need to reframe this right off the bat. That persistent midsection weight, it is absolutely not a failure of your willpower. What you're actually dealing with is a hidden biological mystery, and it's happening entirely while you're fast asleep.
Okay, let's dive into our prime suspect here, cortisol. Now, I know we're all conditioned to view cortisol as this ultimate stress villain, but chemically speaking, cortisol is actually a glucocorticoid. It's produced by your adrenal glands, and its original primary day job is actually blood glucose regulation. So you gotta think of it less like a panic button and more like a biological EMT for your blood sugar.
To understand where this whole process goes off the rails, we have to look at your natural circadian cortisol curve. Cortisol is supposed to peak really high right around 8 a.m. It's that cortisol awakening response that physically gets you out of bed in the morning. Then, it's supposed to steadily drop throughout the day until midnight, where it is biologically programmed to hit rock bottom. And hitting that absolute lowest point, that baseline, is completely crucial for a healthy metabolism.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. It's all about how cortisol interacts with another major player, insulin. They essentially operate on a seesaw, a totally inverse relationship. When your insulin is riding high after a meal, your cortisol is actively suppressed. But when your insulin crashes, your body totally panics. It interprets that sudden drop in blood sugar as a literal life-or-death survival emergency, and it aggressively shoots your cortisol straight up to compensate. So let's see how this builds into the exact problem you're probably facing. Let's say it's 7 p.m., you have a typical quote-unquote healthy dinner. Maybe it's a big bowl of pasta. Your body digests it, but then right around midnight, your blood sugar and insulin crash hard. You're dead asleep, but believe me, your body notices. And then right around 2 a.m., boom, you get hit with a massive emergency surge of cortisol exactly when it's supposed to be at its absolute lowest.
Let's actually break down this 2 a.m. rescue operation step by step. Step 1. Those dinner carbohydrates digest incredibly fast because there was nothing else on the plate to slow them down. Step 2. Right in the middle of your sleep window, your blood sugar plummets. And step 3, your adrenal glands slam the panic button, surging cortisol into your system to break down stored energy and desperately restore your blood glucose levels. So you might be dreaming peacefully, but biologically, your body thinks you're starving out in the wilderness. That healthy bowl of rice literally just set off a massive nocturnal biological alarm.
So you're probably wondering, why does this specific alarm result in belly fat? Well, here is the absolutely crucial missing link. Visceral fat, that's the deep fat stored around your abdominal organs, contains roughly 4 times more glucocorticoid receptors than the fat found anywhere else on your body. 4 times! So when that cortisol surges at 2 a.m., it acts exactly like a homing beacon, signaling your body to deposit all that fat directly into your midsection.
And listen, this isn't just some wild theory, it is heavily backed by the science. There are these groundbreaking studies by researchers Eppel and Dalman, and they really provided the ultimate eureka moment for this whole mechanism. They discover that cortisol secretion is consistently, measurably greater in people with central abdominal fat. They basically revealed a completely new view of how chronic hormonal stress, like that invisible stress of a 2 a.m. blood sugar crash, literally changes our body shape. Your belly fat is, quite literally, acting as a dedicated storage depot for cortisol.
But unfortunately, the damage doesn't just stop at your waistline. Research by Leeprold and Van Cauter maps out the really hidden, systemic costs of this chronic nighttime spike. Sure, you get the increased visceral fat mass, but look at these other impacts. You get elevated fasting glucose the next morning, meaning you're waking up already at a disadvantage. You get disrupted sleep architecture and reduced slow-wave deep sleep, which explains why you're waking up totally exhausted. And over time, this nightly biological roller coaster actually drives systemic insulin resistance. So this is really about protecting your entire metabolic health, not just, fitting into your favorite genes.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact solution. It really all comes down to the dinner plate difference. If you eat a carb-only dinner, you get that rapid spike, the midnight crash, and the inevitable 2 a.m. cortisol surge. But look what happens when we just add a simple protein buffer. The absorption slows completely down,
You get this nice, steady, stable release of glucose, which completely cancels out that 2 a.m. cortisol surge. It's a structural fix, guys, not a restrictive one. You don't have to eat less.
So, what's the magic number to actually create this buffer? It's 35 grams. That is the exact minimum threshold of dietary protein you need at dinner to sufficiently slow down your gastric emptying and buffer that carbohydrate crash. Think of 35 grams of protein like a physiological brake pedal. It makes sure that the carbs you ate at 7 p.m. are slowly, safely trickled into your system while you sleep. That keeps your insulin totally stable and, most importantly, keeps your cortisol blissfully quiet.
To put this into practice tonight, here is your highly actionable 14-day dinner reset protocol. First rule of thumb, never ever eat carbs as a solo macronutrient at dinner again. Second, make sure you pair every single carbohydrate with a minimum of 25 to 35 grams of protein. Third, try to swap out those fast carbs for slow-digesting ones, think sweet potatoes or lentils, to naturally take the edge off that spike. And finally, if you just want a little extra insurance, grab a small serving of cottage cheese right before bed. Its slow-digesting casein protein is absolutely perfect for buffering those late-night cortisol elevations. Remember, you don't have to starve yourself. You literally just have to structure your plate.
Now, if you caught our previous explainer, you'll remember we talked all about that critical growth hormone pulse that happens about 60 minutes into your sleep, and how it absolutely requires amino acids to build the body. Well, you can consider this explainer the vital flip side of that exact same coin. Because while that first 60-minute pulse is working hard to build your body up, that 2 a.m. blood sugar crash and cortisol surge, it's actively destroying your metabolic health. Together, these two mechanisms prove exactly why the composition of your dinner is arguably the single most important meal of the day for your overall body composition.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought and a bit of a challenge. You now understand the hidden biological mystery. You finally know why that belly fat wasn't moving, and you have the exact tool to fix it starting tonight. You do not need to cut out the foods you love, but you do need to outsmart your own hormones. So what will your 35-gram protein buffer look like on tonight's dinner plate? Start the 14-day reset, protect your sleep, and finally tell that midnight cortisol spike to just stand down. Keep learning, keep adjusting, and I'll see you in the next explainer.